The picture that you see up here is where my granddad first settled after he came back from Central America. Before he came here, he'd bought a banana plantation in Central America. He was down there for a year, and he went broke down there. The bananas that he raised were condemned and laid on the dock and rotted. He borrowed money from an uncle to get back up to Davenport. He rented this field that you see here, and where that cistern is on top of the hill, there was a set of buildings up there. He moved back here in the fall of 1899, as near as I can come up with a date. And then that fall he bought 3 horses and a walking plow, and he started to plow on that quarter section, 160 acres, on Thanksgiving Day, and by spring he had enough plowed that, or he had the whole thing plowed and was able to seed a spring crop in. And then the next summer he was able to rent a ranch just across the road, which is school land, and he moved down there and settled, and we'll swing the camera around and show you the home site there. Get the trees in the focus there.
We're on now, Bob.
The trees that you see ahead on the road line there, my granddad planted those after he got rented this school section, and my dad, when he was a little kid, had to haul water on a stone boat, and a team of horses, and watered those trees. Those trees were planted for a half a mile west, as you see there, and then to the right they went a half a mile back up the other road, and that was quite a chore watering those trees.
Right.
The trees that you see here, that old woodshed and garage, was where the house used to be, the original house where my grandparents moved when they rented this place. That house, I was raised in there until I left home, and it was tore down about, probably 20 years ago, and the house is no longer there. But that's where I was raised from the time I came home from the hospital until I graduated from school. The buildings that you see here were buildings that were built by my granddad after he started farming this school land. The big barn on the one on the right was built in 1904. We have the building, the lumber bill for that barn. At that time, the lumber that went into the barn cost $1,200, and the labor bill to build the barn was $1,200. And then the building, the big long shed to the left, was built for a machine shed storage area, and that was built in 1915. And you see that there's a door up above those the big white doors there where you drive in and out. They were going to put a floor in up there and have some storage area up there for some things, but it was made so that they could drive the horses inside, unhitch them, and everything inside the building. The same is true with the big barn up there. The door that you see down on the lower level, right under where the numbers are when the barn was built, that was so that they could drive their teams in there and unhitch them and put them away without having to be out in the weather. Up there on top of the hill, when my granddad started to plow that with this foot burner and 3 horses, he was only cutting, as near as I know, probably a 16-inch furrow going around the field. So I tried to figure up exactly how many miles he walked, but as near as I can figure, it was 985 miles he walked to plow that quarter. If he had a 16-inch plow, if he had a 14-inch walking plow, then he had to walk about 1,120 miles. Barn there where it says 1904, that was the year that this barn was built, and the double doors down on the lower level, of course, is where they used to drive the teams in, as I mentioned before, to unhitch. On each side of those double doors were single stalls for the horses, so they could keep the horses on each side. They could, up above was all hay storage, and my dad said one year they had a scale here, and they had over 100 ton of loose hay put in this on the top part of this barn, and they could kick the hay down from up above. It went down a slide and into a manger. They never to feed the horses. Then they also could feed grain. They had doors in front of the horses where they could just open up that door and feed grain to the horse in a box on the side of the manger. The shed you see there is just, that's a new building, or well, it's not new, it's been there about 25, 30 years, but we have tanks, underground tanks for diesel and gasoline, and the building is for storage of oil and grease and so forth. This is the shed that was built for a machine shed in 1915. I don't have any idea what the lumber costs on this are. We don't have that. I don't know how long it took to build it, or what the cost of building it was. But there was one fella killed off of this building on the west side. He fell off on the peak up there, and he was killed when they were building the building.
Well,
these doors that you see here on top is where we used to have the derrick team that pulled the nets up to put the hay in the barn when we was filling it with the barn, the barn with hay. They used to drive out these doors and out towards us. That pulled the cable and raised the nets out of the hay wagon up and in the big doors at the peak of the barn. And you'd dump it or pull a trip rope, and that would dump the nets, put the hay in the barn.
coming around to where
we're coming around past the machine shed now, and probably up on the hill you can see, as they say, across the road up there, and on top of the hill is where my granddad first settled when he came back here, and that's the quarter that he plowed with a walking plow behind 3 horses.
It's good, Bob.
This rock wall that you see, or cement wall, went over, and you'll see later it joined with the barn. But my granddad was going to build a dairy barn out here and milk cows, but he never did get the barn built. Probably a good thing, or we'd still be milking cows. As we go along here, you'll see there's a indentation in the wall there. That's a concrete watering trough that they had for watering the horses. After you get past the concrete there where it's kind of deteriorated, you'll see another concrete wall. That's been replaced there. We put that in later years.
Thank you, Robert.
You can see the buildings now where my granddad Gunning built way down the draw, and I'm standing right at the location where the buildings were for my granddad Slater on my mother's side. We'll refocus the camera and then take a shot of that, but it's just directly ahead of me where the buildings were for my granddad Slater. He homesteaded this ground here and lost it during the Depression.
Good. Then, tell you what, we can kind
of... maybe right down here now, you know, when you're...
Did you have it on EP record? I said it's on EP record now. Did you miss it?
Well, I pushed that button.
I tell you, talk over again because I think you missed it.
I think you missed it?
Yeah.
Is it going now?
Yeah.
Irvin said I missed this, so I'll have to talk it over, say it over again. The buildings you see down there are the buildings that we were just at and took pictures of. That's where my granddad Gunning farmed. Where I'm standing right now is the building site where my granddad Slater, my mother's father, homesteaded and had his building site. And it's just directly ahead of me here, just a few feet. And you can see they weren't very far apart when they went courting.
Cup that thing and tell all about it.
Down in the draw down here to the right of where the winter wheat seeded, but in the stubble ground here at the foot of the hill from where we're standing, in order to homestead ground back in those days, they would get a quarter of ground free, but they had to plant so many acres of what they called timber culture. And my granddad planted trees down there that are no longer there anymore, but he I don't know how many acres it was, I don't recall that, but at least they had to plant so many acres of trees in order to claim this quarter section of land for free and clear.
Just keep panning along a little bit and get a little bit more of that. I think that's the end of it, Bob.
You can see the tail end of the pickup here, and right here is the building site where my granddad Slater homesteaded, where he built his buildings, and he used to farm this. There's a half section here, but he, as I say, he lost this during the Depression, and he had to move on, and so this is owned by other people at this time.
I'm going to pan just a little further along and get more of it in. Boy, this is beautiful. Good farming country. Robert, this has been great.
Lots of fun.
You bet. Boy, oh boy, isn't that something? Well,
Irvin wanted to take a picture across here of the mountains over there. As you see, that's across the Columbia River on the, well, actually, where we're shooting there, that would be the Spokane River. The Columbia and Spokane join to the left of that. But where he first started shooting there was about where our cabin is located, and right across the river is where the Indians had the irrigation system up there for alfalfa, and where Western Nuclear had, it was a little bit to the left of there also, where they had their uranium mine.
Looks like they should come in pretty good, Bob. They might show up pretty good in the viewfinder anyway. So, well, that's about the end of that. That should make a good picture. Here's a picture of a picture. This is the barn that we just took a picture of, and how many horses did you say were there, Bob?
I really don't know how many are, I haven't counted. I guess we could count them.
And then over to the right was your grandfather?
No, the one in the middle holding the stallion is my granddad. The one over to the far right is my Uncle Arnold, and the next one to his left is my Uncle Bill. I think my dad is way over to the left of the picture, but I'm not real sure. I can recognize these others from their face, but I can't tell.
Yeah, okay. And now this is was built in 1904?
Right.
Boy, but that's a good dandy building. It's still a good building.
Oh.
And the guy, the man standing out pretty much in front.
Yeah.
In the foreground, that's your dad?
My granddad.
Oh, that's your granddad?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then we'll try to take a picture of the other picture. We're going to take a picture of this picture. However, looking in the viewfinder, don't look like it's going to come out that good. But nevertheless, if it isn't all right, we can tape over it. So, anything you want to say about that, Bob?
As you can see in the picture, the barn, which was built in 1904, is there. The machine shed was built in 1915, and it isn't there. So this picture had to have been taken between 1904 and 1915. Now, I don't know exactly when, but there are 20 head of horses on the combine. This is one of the old ground power type combines. It didn't have any motor on it. It was ran from ground power off pulling by the horses. My granddad Gunny is up, the person standing high on the combine. My Uncle Bill is driving the horses. My dad is jigging sacks where the sack sower is. One of the gentlemen out behind is my granddad Slater on my mother's side of the family, standing out behind the combine.
Well, Bob, I think that I don't believe the picture's going to come out good, but it's a good description, so we can figure it out from there. You bet.